Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to react to this Piers Morgan debate where they're discussing the Netflix series on Cleopatra, where a black actress was hired to play the role. And I saw he invited our old friend Ernest back to the show, the guy who accused him of racism and couldn't produce any receipts. So this should be interesting. So let's take a look.
Welcome back to Piers Morgan. This is a big budget Netflix series on Cleopatra. It's been hit with claims of cultural vandalism over the casting of black actress Adele James in the lead role. Cleopatra's precise heritage is a point of scholarly debate. There's no evidence that she was black, and the casting has caused major controversy in Egypt, spurring a lawsuit and claims the program makers are erasing Egyptian identity. It's not the first casting controversy we've seen, of course, though the backlash is normally the other way round. Bryan Cranston was lambasted for playing a disabled character in The Upside, as was Jake Gyllenhaal, who starred in The Prince of Persia despite not being Persian or a prince. And of course, Eddie Redmayne issued a grovelling apology for playing a trans woman in The Danish Girl. So is casting Cleopatra as a black woman culturally insensitive? Should we care? Isn't the job of an actor, after all, to act? Well, joining me now is legendary Egyptian comedian Bassem Youssef and author of The Case for Cancel Culture, Ernest Owens. Well, welcome to both of you. Okay, let me start with you, Ernest Owens. Off you go.
I think that this is ridiculous. I think that she is in full range to play Cleopatra. I think people should remember that there was controversy when the late, great Elizabeth Taylor played Cleopatra, and people thought that it was inaccurate for a white woman like her to play the character. History has said that there is some racial ambiguity around Cleopatra's identity. She's definitely not white. And I think to even assume that Egyptians do not carry some level of African ancestry that can have a darker skin complexion is also historically inaccurate. So I think she's more of the ideal of what Cleopatra would look like more than Elizabeth Taylor would be. And you didn't see as much backlash for Elizabeth Taylor playing Cleopatra.
So I guess it's two extremes. There was backlash for Elizabeth Taylor because historically it's unlikely that she would have looked like a white, European person. And at the same time, it's questioned, whether she would have looked like someone from sub-Saharan Africa either, because, this is in Egypt.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So let me go to you, Bess. I mean, that is a fair point. Liz Taylor was the biggest movie star in the world at the time she played Cleopatra. She was not Egyptian. What's the difference?
Well, first of all, this was Hollywood before it was informed. This is where 1961, when Cleopatra by Elizabeth Taylor, we're not crazy about Elizabeth Taylor playing Cleopatra either. That was also inaccurate. I don't know where do you get the idea that we're happy that she played the role. As a matter of fact, 1961 Cleopatra movie was banned in Egypt and many Arab countries because of Elizabeth Taylor's stance towards the state of Israel, because they supported them. So I don't know where does he kind of get this information. Second of all, this is the same Hollywood that in 1956 they cast John Wayne as Genghis Khan. So this is a time where Hollywood didn't know any better. Now, the problem for me, it's not about color. It's not about white and black. This is a very reductive way to talk about things. This is the way that Americans talk about it. I'm very sorry. Like, I come from Egypt. Egypt has a very diverse color palette. People can look like me or they can look deeper skin tone like Anwar Sadat, who comes from a Nubian origin. It's not about black and white. It's about the continuous culture appropriation and falsification of history that has been done by what the so-called Afrocentrist movement. The Afrocentric movement started the last century as a way, in a good intention, to teach African American about their rich history of West Africa, the great empire of Benin, of Ghana, of Songhali, the great empire of Mali. But the thing is, that's why you find people like Kevin Hart, who subscribes to these theories, who claim that his ancestors built the pyramids. I'm sorry, your ancestors had their own wonderful civilization in West Africa. They are culture appropriating my culture, calling the people of Egypt of today, despite their skin tone, that they call us as invaders, they call us as intruders, and they are being erased from our own history.
Okay.
Wow. Wow. So the guy's had enough, man, and he speaks for a lot of people who have had enough. It's the people who are the loudest are the ones that Hollywood panders to. And he's like, what about us? You're worried about, offending Black Americans. So you cast somebody, who's black, or obviously the European aesthetic has been the norm from day one. And he said back then they didn't know better. And he's like, what about real Egyptians? What about what we think? No one's asking us. There's a group of African Americans who call themselves Nubians. But Nubians are from, Ethiopia and Sudan. They're from, they're the ones who migrated over to Egypt. And there's remnants of that today. That's why we have, like he rightly said, there's all different shades in Egypt. But predominantly it's, people, it's Arabs. So he's like, where's that representation? Very interesting.
This is something that Hollywood has done over the years.
I understand, but let me throw this back at you. There's this point that we've had so many cases now where people talk about appropriation with actors, be it their sexuality, be it their gender on occasion, be it whatever it may be. And ultimately, I always come back to one point, which is, shouldn't actors do what their job description is? Act. I mean, shouldn't any actor be able to play any part, actually? And once you start making exceptions for that rule, where do you stop?
I mean, I do agree that actors are hired for their acting skills. So therefore, they don't actually have to be the person they're portraying. They don't have to have the same circumstances as the person they're portraying. So I don't believe there's anything wrong with an able-bodied person playing somebody with a disability. I mean, in Rayman, Dustin Hoffman played somebody with autism. I don't believe he actually has autism. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think you actually have to have the same conditions to play, somebody, portray a character who has those conditions. So I do agree with Piers in that regard. I think it's a good question. Where does it stop? Now, I would like movies to be more historically accurate, but Hollywood is filled with people from the West predominantly, because that's why it's called Hollywood. It's an actor from the UK has to work really hard to break into that Hollywood scene, to go over to America and, be a part of Hollywood. So it's going to be even harder for someone from Egypt, from that part of the world or other parts of Africa to break into the Hollywood scene per se. So I understand why we don't see people from, other parts of the world playing the characters portrayed on the Hollywood big screen. That's usually the reason. You need a lot of money, typically, to break into Hollywood. Acting classes, acting school, agents, people from other parts of the world aren't going to have access to those things. So it's going to be harder for them to break into Hollywood. So that's why we don't see them, in movies as much as... I know there's some movies where they go to those parts of the world and they want to employ or they want to hire actors from, those tribes to play those parts because it makes more sense. But directors don't always do that, unfortunately.
Is that question for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is not a work of fiction. This is a documentary. This is a documentary. There is a huge difference. This is not The Little Mermaid, which is like a fictional character where anybody can play anything. Cleopatra came from a Macedonian Greek origin, and the thing is, it's not about like the skin color. We don't care about if they're black or white. It's about how Hollywood is so culturally sensitive, and they're so sensitive about all kinds of minorities. But when it comes to my people, we seem to be erased. A couple of years ago, they announced that Gal Gadot, an ex-Israeli soldier who condones her government actions, the atrocities against Palestinian children, she was going to play Cleopatra. For me, this is even a bigger insult. And Gal Gadot is not black. It's not about black and white. It's about this idea of Hollywood always stealing the culture of my own people. I don't care what Charleston Heston tells you in the Ten Commandments or Steven Spielberg tells you in The Prince of Egypt, but I am sorry, Jewish slaves did not build the Great Pyramid. This has been debunked many times by historians.
Let me
so I think it's like we are the only people who are not allowed to tell our own... We are the only people who are not allowed to talk about our own history.
All right, let me bring on...
Wow. Piers got a bit nervous there when he mentioned people of a certain religion. He could tell he got nervous there. But like he's saying, it's not just about being culturally sensitive. It's also being politically sensitive too. If you're going to hire an actor who has, political affiliations, that will that's contrary to what those people stand for, that again is offensive to them. So, or to anybody. So there's that to consider too. So that's interesting. Look at Ernest's face. Ernest is not having it. So yeah, in Egypt, again, like the reason why there's so many different shades, you have the Nubians from, people, very dark-skinned people in Sudan, Ethiopia. And then you have Turkish, Persian, Greeks. They all migrated over to that part of the Nile. So that's why we have all different shades. So if they did hire somebody, lighter skinned, that's not inaccurate. If they hired somebody who looked Greek, Turkish, that's not inaccurate in terms of, skin tone. But you will have some people, the loudest, who will complain and say, oh no, they were darker skinned than that. Where the people who look like, who look black. You would have those people complaining. So again, I understand what he's saying. It's not about the skin shade. It's being sensitive to the culture. And, maybe he's just saying hire some Egyptians and don't hire people who have certain political affiliations too, who are against my people. I think that's what he's saying also. But okay.
All right. Okay.
I disagree.
Hang on, Ernest. Let me ask you a question, Ernest. Which is, how would you feel if a white actor was chosen to play Nelson Mandela?
I think that there is historical inaccuracies there. I think that, I think what he's confusing is race and nationality. And I also think that is why you don't see as many black actors upset as Cynthia Erivo, who is British, who played, Harriet, because we understand the nuances of racial identity compared to nationality versus the identity of the African diaspora. So no one's upset about the fact that David Onyalu played MLK. There may be some people, but others didn't, because we understood the nuance of racial identity. So when we're talking about race and nationality, those are two different things. But I think the issue that I want to push back on what he said earlier is that there are other actors in this film that are playing Egyptians that do not look like Cleopatra or come from there. And I just feel like the energy being focused on Cleopatra is why some people are pushing back.
I would say that this guy definitely appears to know the difference between nationality and race. I mean, he just said it's not about skin tone. He mentioned, Greek Macedonia. So obviously he's not against people from parts of Europe playing those characters, because they represent those who came over to that part of the Nile and settled there. And that's why there's different shades in Egypt. He clearly does. And I have to say that from my experience, I find that some Americans are guilty of that, not knowing the difference between nationality and race.
Because this actress could easily look, by identity, looks closer to what Cleopatra could look like. But the rest of that cast is fairly white. And you're not saying anything about those individuals. You're only focused on Cleopatra, who's being played by this black actress. But when you look at the other cast, I don't think they're all Egyptian. I don't think they all represent the cast.
That's true.
All right, let me bring back Bassem. I mean, if this was in a theatre production, I could imagine this happening without people creating much of a fuss. Is it because it's a Hollywood movie and Hollywood's put itself in the vanguard of cultural appropriation?
It's a documentary. Hollywood has been erasing my people from we are not allowed to tell our own history. And I'm sorry, I have to disagree with the gentleman. It's not about, it's not just Cleopatra. Everybody in that movie, her court, everybody who's supposed to be Egyptian, they look like they came from West Africa, from the south of the Sahara. We, as Egyptians, are being called intruders and invaders in our own culture. This has been going on systematically. I don't want to wake up one day and find a museum of the African American culture and history claiming the stolen Egyptian artifacts in the British Museum to be theirs. And now I'm hearing that Zendaya, the very popular actor, who I would love her to play it, but Zendaya ethnically is half Nigerian, half German, and now she's going to play. Where are the Egyptian actors? Where are the Arab actors who suppose it? And the thing is, even like historically wise, you see in the trailer, it's like, I don't care what they told you, but Cleopatra was black. Who's that woman? Why is African American people are telling my own history? She is there's all of these pseudoscience.
Ernest's face. He's not having any of it. Ernest's face, man. His facial expressions are classic.
And pseudo history has been going on, and it has implications. No, I am sorry. African people from West Africa did not build the pyramids.
Okay.
Cleopatra did not like that, and also Jewish people do not build the pyramids.
Okay.
It is time for Hollywood to listen to the people who own that history. So
Well, you've made that.
And just
You've made that.
one more
Bassem,
thing.
I've got to leave it there.
One more thing. Egypt had 30 dynasty over 2,700 years. We had kings and queens from the kingdom of Kush, from Nubia, from Libya. This area had bled into each other and expanded and shrunk into each other. I understand exactly what I mean when I say nationality or heritage or ethnicity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why there's all those different shades within Egypt. So he's right. It's just Hollywood. Hollywood care about big bucks. They don't really care about being historically accurate. Let's just be real. They care. I mean, they will take something and they will make their own interpretation of it. But whatever is going to get people to come to the movies and pay money, that's all they care about. They don't care about, being accurate. But like he said, apparently this is a documentary. So in this case, they should care. I can understand his frustration. The most powerful, institution in the world, one of the most powerful institutions, is Hollywood. So they should make their own historically accurate depictions. We all should. But ultimately, what's going to get the most attention, what's going to make the most money are movies that come from Hollywood. Not Nollywood, not Bollywood, and all of that. They're the biggest, powerhouse. So we just have to make our own. I really believe that. Whether that's, here in America with African Americans making their own movies, getting out there and, using the opportunities to do that, funding what needs to be funded independently, that's the answer. But history matters. History should matter more than aesthetic and, sensationalism. It really should, especially today, where our history is now being mixed in with politics and agendas and weird ideologies. So it is concerning that history seems to be going down that route. So so let me know what you think. Very interesting. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.